Hello and welcome to Charisma School. It's my goal with this series of videos to explain you the several different concepts of will and willpower and give you an introduction of how you can develop it and use it skillfully. The concepts of will and willpower are filled with misunderstandings, or at least different people mean different things regarding these terms. So our first task is to define and understand the terms surrounding it to ensure that you know exactly what we are talking about and what exactly you want to be developing and what you need to avoid. Willpower is very commonly concerned as the ability to do something that you know that you should do, but you don't really want to. Of course, there are other more exact definitions, but when most people think about it, they consider something like this. You know that you should diet, but you would prefer not to and continue eating as you like. You know that you should do some work, but you would prefer to do something else that's a bit more fun. Having the necessary strength to overcome this, it's what's commonly considered willpower. But if we think about the opposite situation, when you truly want to do it, you just do it. There's no willpower, no effort or strength necessary. Just think about how much willpower you need to go to the beach or to go to play some video games or watch Netflix or whatever that you passively do to relax or have fun. Not that much. You just do it without much thought or effort or power. And even if there's some effort involved to do what you want to do, let's say going into a hidden or secluded beach, you do it without much willpower needed since it's something that you want to do. So the problem is in those tasks that you know you should do, but you don't really want to. Maybe it's because something else is more appealing, like staying in bed when you should go for a run or watching Netflix instead of working. Momentary pleasure is more appealing than future satisfaction. Either way, whatever the reason, you would prefer to do something other than those things that you should do. Why? Why does this happen? Because you are more connected to that momentary pleasure than you are connected to the other apparently smaller part of you that wants something greater than the immediate pleasure. In other words, you feel the energy of the momentary pleasure much more, while the other, as important as it may be, it just doesn't feel that much at that moment. And then you go with what feels more and feels better at that moment. At some other moment, it might be different, but at that moment, when you wake up to go for a run, you just feel a lot more of the warmth of the bed rather than the future pleasure that you may feel after your successful run. Here, we can immediately notice how the larger pleasurable feeling or the impulses that you may feel are often not the best for you or what you truly want. Something that you immediately and greatly feel is often not really connected to your will, and more often than not, it's the smaller feeling inside of you. Being connected to your will or acting through your will means you have the ability to be conscious of both of these feelings and choose the one more connected with your true want. The key word here is choose. Your choice and hence your freedom is the true mark of your will and a magnetic individual. It's not a choice if you are only being pulled by the stronger pleasurable feeling while ignoring your true want. This is what animals do. They have bodily impulses and they act on them to satisfy those impulses. That's not what we consider will. Overall, the will is a deep internal power, a true connection with your center. It's a consciousness and an awareness of a deep part of you that is beyond momentary pleasure or whatever that you may be feeling in your body. It's also your ability to choose. It's your freedom. And then willpower, it's a will trait that manifests your ability to actually do what is more connected to your true want, despite everything else that you may be feeling. Regardless of any other energetic noise or any other impulse you may feel, you will do what you choose. So we have these three aspects here. First, connecting with your will, being aware of your center. Secondly, being able to choose, have your own freedom. And thirdly, actually doing what you truly want to do, beyond momentary pleasure or any other bodily impulses. When you connect with your will and actually do what you truly want to do, you feel a sense of alignment, as if everything is where it should be. It doesn't mean that everything goes according to your plans and expectations, but at least you know you are in the right place. And in this video, we are working with impulses versus purpose. The impulse that our body and mind can have versus the larger purpose for your life and how to handle the conflict that is inherent here. It's inevitable that you will feel this conflict. Most likely, you feel it every day in one way or the other. So how do you handle it? Usually, when we think about the willpower, there's a different speech, including in most psychological research. I'm sure that until now, you had a different picture in mind when you think about willpower. As we have discussed, you most likely think about enduring a challenging situation or where you are swimming against the current and need some help to break through. Your mental image will probably be related to going against your desire, something that you want. For example, you may want to eat that delicious hamburger and fries, but you are holding yourself back because you are on a diet. You still think and desire that hamburger, but you avoid eating it with your willpower. So you struggle and you suffer through it, but you endure. Now let's use a more precise definition of willpower. The dictionary definition of willpower is the ability to control yourself, strong determination that allows you to do something difficult. That is the traditional notion of Victorian will. In the Victorian age, the virtue of willpower, self-restraint and self-control was quite popular due to the various historical and cultural factors and some self-help books published around that time. Many people in the Victorian age built psychic, energetic and muscular armor in themselves by living 24 hours a day in this restraint. But, as you might expect, it generates different layers of repression, or a combination of psychosomatic problems when used with this much intensity. It's easy for you to understand why it happens. You'll need to imagine that each time you have a desire, emotion, or thought you don't want to have, you firmly say, "You don't want it. I don't want this." In a short time, you'll create a whole deposit of repressed energy of desires and emotions that strive for some release. It's like you are pushing this energy deeper and deeper until there's no more room left and it has to come out. If you think about the way people commonly face dieting and nutrition, it's the same principle. Pick a restrictive diet and avoid all the sweetened foods that you love. Then one day, you cannot resist anymore and binge eat for a whole day. Then, in a short while, you forget about the diet altogether. This is a typical diet of output when you use this traditional willpower or the Victorian will. In this Victorian age, this self-control armor was so strong that Freud and his followers worked hard to break it. It was the only way that they could help these suffering individuals underneath this heavy armor of repressed desires and emotions. And with this, you probably conclude that the traditional Victorian willpower isn't the most efficient way to gather strength and motivation to do what you want. But you intuitively know that you have an internal strength inside of you just waiting to be unleashed. So the key to willpower is to know how to direct this strength without building this strong muscular armor and this pit of repressed energy. In other words, how can you actively choose without repression and restraint? For this, it's important to again talk about this Victorian willpower and our overall concept of will, particularly in how to distinguish them. The will in itself is the most intimate function that connects with yourself. It's our pure self-consciousness. It's hard to communicate with words, but it's the connection with your true I. The awareness and consciousness that I spoke about. I'm sure that you felt it in any truly determined action. The experience of willing is always related to the true will. When you make a physical or a mental effort, or decide to do something from the depth of your being, or when you are struggling with some obstacle but choose to continue, you feel a specific power rise in you. A power that makes you experience profound internal energy. Those with energy awareness can pinpoint it exactly. But remember that willing is not the same as being driven to action by some addiction. You are not willing anything when you are watching TV in zombie mode or when you click on an ad that grabs your attention. This is merely following your impulses. That's the polar opposite of willing. That's going with the most obvious and highlighted feeling that you may be feeling at that time. It's being unconscious. You are willing when you wake up from your everyday trance and decide to do something with full awareness of your choice and freedom. When you clear your mind and emotions, connect with your inside self and decide to act. Your will is an extraordinary power which, with good guidance, can be a source of strength to help you in your path. So we see a clear distinction here. While in the traditional Victorian will and what most people consider willpower, there's a restraint and a repression, in our concept we find freedom and choice. Particularly willpower, as we consider in Charisma School, is an attribute of the will. Definitely not the only one, but an important attribute nonetheless. It's the strength and intensity of the will, the fire. Usually, it's the most well-known aspect of the will and the only attribute everyone thinks of when the will is brought up as a subject. But all those with some mystical experience, from the New Thought world, Kabbalistic, or even from other Western esoteric traditions, know the will is much more than this. Sure, you need the power, no denying there, but you also need more traits of the will, and using only the power, or the fire aspect, will burn anyone. And the power is mentioned, it's not necessarily a repression mechanism like a Victorian will, or something that depletes itself like the current research in the field of psychology. The power of the will, as we see it, has many different traits than the commonly known willpower of Victorian will. But you must know how to use it, and here lies the key. Willpower, as we see it, is self-reinforcing. In other words, the more you use it, the easier it becomes to apply it. When you stop applying your will in your daily life, it's easy to let go completely. And then what happens is that you start doing things that you know that you shouldn't. Suddenly, you start to follow whatever impulses that you may be having. It could be overeating and you begin to gain weight. Maybe it's slacking off in the gym and you start getting lazy. It could be in your business or in your job, and so on. In a blink of an eye, you stop being a willful, conscious being and transform into an unconscious being that only follows his own impulses without reflection. It's easy for this to happen because the will needs consistent application. You need to keep using it to maintain it. The good news is that it's only hard in the beginning. After you slack off for a while, it will be hard to get back on track. But once you start and the will is applied daily in your life, everything becomes a lot easier. In fact, you even search for more activities and projects to apply your will, because you start seeing the improvement in your life, and it gets effortless to do more. When the will is in motion, then it takes very little to keep it in motion. However, once it's stopped, or hardly used, even consciously lifting a finger is hard. That's why some people can do so many things, while others struggle to get out of bed and go to the gym. The more you use your will, the easier it becomes. But once you stop applying it and start giving in to your unconscious impulses, it becomes a big struggle again. Also, it's not about repressing or ignoring or fighting. When there's an urge or an unconscious impulse that you are denying, that you are pushing down, it will eventually pop back up. We know this is true from the Victorian will, or even just by reflecting on your own experience. So what's the alternative then? It's to become aware of that urge or impulse and facing it with full awareness. It's not about denying it, repressing it, or ignoring it. It's about facing it and becoming aware of all its facets. Also, willpower needs to be aligned with everything inside of you. If you want to do something, but for some reason you get distracted, you feel resistance, you procrastinate, it can mean that there's something inside of you that is not aligned with what you want to do. This is how your unconscious manifests itself, with feelings and impulses to do something else. A small part of you deviates from your major goal and your will. There's a part of you that is holding back for some reason, and you need to understand and become aware of it. Again, not just intellectually. You may know all the mental reasons for it, maybe you even listed and wrote about them, but as before, knowing them intellectually and mentally is not the same as being conscious of their full effects on your body, energy, and mind. Sometimes there can be situations that can be solved externally, but more often than not, you need to work on them internally. Working on them, in this sense, is about bringing mind, body, and energy into alignment. Ensure everything inside of you is aligned with what you want to do. This means becoming aware of what procrastination is and what's holding you back with a non-resistance mind, understanding it, solving it, and finally allowing it to flow inside of you. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. But alignment is absolutely essential for the good and fruitful use of willpower. You will notice how little willpower and you now need after this process. Whatever you need or want to do is no longer an insurmountable mountain. All you need to do after this alignment process is push your will down that mountain and let it roll. The will then reinforces itself. You could use the Victorian will or the strong, overbearing willpower to overrule these aspects of you that are not in alignment. But remember, they will come back later to bite you, so that's not a smart use of the will. And the final point is, the will is always there. Many people state that they don't have willpower, but your will is always there, and so is this power. It's impossible not to have it. It's ever present. It's not something that you have or not. Instead, it's something that you connect with or you don't. It may be similar, but it has an important psychological difference. It's not like either you were born with it or not. It's a choice. A choice to either connect with it or not connect with it. Either you know how to connect with your will and do so often, or you don't, and the connection starts to weaken. We can compare the will connection to the construction of a highway. It takes a while to get it done, and it takes some effort, but once it's done and it's being used regularly, it takes little to maintain it. It may take a while for you to learn how to connect with your will, but once you do it and you start to do it often, then it becomes quite easy. Once it's in motion, it's easy to stay in motion. The hard part is the beginning. Then its maintenance is the easy part. You only need to use it. But if you build this highway and stop using it, then it happens like all the other abandoned highways. It starts to disintegrate and it's slowly destroyed, which will then force you to rebuild it with all the effort that it implies once more. So as we have seen, the traditional concept of willpower, the Victorian will, of applying effort and repressing other feelings and impulses that you might have, is not what we are recommending and training. This indeed won't take you very far. It will be a matter of time before you give in or whatever that you are repressing pops back up or eats you from the inside. Instead, we want to train the connection to your will and the power associated with that in a conscious way. We want to ensure everything inside of you is aligned with your will. Only this way can you use its full power and integrate the impulses of your animal self or lower self. In our next video, we'll go deeper into this concept. See you then.